This is Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed. We haven't been recording recently. We've had a busy
summer.
Busy summer. Very busy summer. Our oldest son moved out, and we are now officially empty nesters. I feel like maybe you should play that celebration song. Like, you could edit that into this when you, before you know. Anyway. And I jest because it was a little rough on us. We kind of struggled with it a little, but we still have some kids around and we get to see our grandkids and stuff. So that helps. But he moved all the way across the country, which made things a little more difficult.
Yep.
A little bit.
But he made it.
He did make it. He asked us not to text him every day while he was traveling, but he proceeded to text us anyway. Tell us where he was. Yeah, every day. And send us pictures and stuff because he went through the Rockies and Montana and all that stuff.
But just once.
Yes. Yeah. So, and we've just been busy doing summer things.
Yeah.
I attempted a triathlon and failed. That was an interesting experience.
It's a learning experience.
Yeah, I learned I'm not going to do it anymore. That's
right.
what I learned.
You're not a triathlon person.
No, I'm not. Not anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. I got a shiny new bike out of it, but other than that, which will come out of the shed this fall when it cools off again.
Right, it's so hot.
It's just where we are. It's been brutal. So anyway, I decided to title this evening's episode "The Feminine Mistake," which is my take on the feminine mystique. We are going to tackle some lies about feminism and what feminism has done to society, to relationships, and to marriage in particular. So any of my lady peeps out there who are easily triggered or don't want to hear about how bad feminism is, you may want to find something else to listen to because this could get brutal.
It will.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's about today's feminism and the things that are happening.
Yeah.
In society today, especially in the U.S., I guess. But
it's worldwide, but
okay.
We're basically talking about feminism from the 50s forward to today.
So we're not talking about the whatever you call it, first wave. Feminism.
I have my issues with that too, but that's not what we're going to discuss tonight.
Right.
And, if anybody has any questions about that, you can send an email us and, ask questions. But I have information about prior versions of feminism as well. And I specifically on all of my social media, when it says a description, I will put anti-feminist. And I think I've been that way for, most of my life. Yeah. And it does have to do with the fact that I was a stay-at-home mom and homeschooled my kids and all that stuff, but I think I've felt that way even prior to us getting married. I felt like there was something backwards and upside down about this.
Okay.
I felt issues with it. So, just for my own amusement, I'm going to bring up two examples of bad feminism, probably the worst that I've seen in the last month. The worst two examples that I've seen in the last month or so.
Okay.
No, well, we talked about this. So I saw Katy Perry is going to be releasing some new song, and it's all about woman power or something. And all I saw, I'm not a Katy Perry fan. I'm not going to go listen to the song because it'll probably just piss me off. I saw a preview of this video, and it was, she's supposed to be a sluttier version of Rosie the Riveter, which is interesting. And it showed women in construction and, on the beams of buildings and doing all this stuff, right?
In bikinis or something?
Yeah, in bikinis. Yes, in bikinis. Sitting
welding.
on the, welding. Yeah, welding in bikinis. So just ponder that one for a second, how stupid that is. So, ladies, I know that you want to wear your power suits and go to this job and feel like you have power over other people. I know all that. But let me tell you something. Where we live right now, there are construction sites every half mile because there is massive building going on all around us.
Yeah.
There are houses, apartment buildings, regular buildings. We've got 2 new grocery stores. It's crazy. It's crazy. There's roads being put down, and every day I drive through it on my way to the gym. And I will tell you, I have not once seen a female on any construction site, on any scaffolding, building anything, on any of the landscaping crews. It's been 112 degree heat index, 112 degrees down here for 3 weeks. Yeah, during the afternoon. So these men are out there, long sleeves, long pants, hats on, the whole 9 yards. And they're doing everything that's required to keep things looking nice and to build these buildings. And I'm not saying that women can't do those jobs. They probably could, but I don't see any. Because those are not the kind of jobs that women who want to feel powerful go and try to do. They don't do those jobs. And well, and I've seen man on the street interviews. I think we'll talk about this a little bit, where these guys go up to a group of college girls and do you need men? And they'll go, no, I don't need men. Yeah. And they're standing on a street corner in a city with streets that were likely paved by men. The trash is picked up by men. The buildings were built by men, but they don't need men. It's just as backwards as it can possibly be. Now, the second example just played out last Saturday. We are recording this on the Friday after President Trump's assassination attempt.
Oh yeah.
And we didn't find out about it until right after it had happened, actually, because my daughter and son-in-law were here visiting and we're playing with my grandson, whatever. They left here around a little bit before 6, and this happened at 6:11, if I'm not mistaken. That's the exact time. And so we got them, they left. I came upstairs. I was gonna, take a shower or whatever. And I sit down with my phone, and there it is. And I was just, I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it happened. It really was shocking to see it.
That something like that would happen today.
Yes. Yeah.
In the United States.
Yeah. So, but here's the second thing I noticed. He has women in his Secret Service detail. Now, look. I think that women can do a lot of jobs. I'm not saying that women shouldn't be in a military type of environment. My grandmother was in the military. She was in the Navy. But she was in the administrative side of the Navy. She was not in the direct line of fire. And there are jobs that women should not ever do. Ever. Spec Ops is one. Navy SEALs, Rangers, whatever the other service branches have, and Secret Service. They should not ever be in the Secret Service. Trump is 6'4". These women were my height, which is a full foot shorter than him. They looked bewildered, incompetent, anxious. They didn't look like they knew what they were doing. One of them could not holster her weapon, and she tried twice. It was a little bit clown show-ish. So we're going to we're going to have a discussion tonight about how feminism has lied to us as a society. And those, I think those two examples are good examples of this is where we are now. This is what the lie has led us to believe.
Okay.
Right? So I just wanted to start with those two. Those two stories just hit me upside the head like a 2x4. I couldn't, the Katy Perry thing, I laughed out loud. It's funny. It's sad because a lot of young girls are going to watch that video and listen to that music, and I don't know what they're going to think they can go do. I have no idea. But we also noticed that when Trump showed up at the Republican National Convention, there were no women protecting him. There were at least 15 hulking, strapped men protecting him when he walked in and out of that venue. So, I don't know what the shakeup was, but whatever it was for the best.
Okay.
Yeah. So, where do we want to start this? Now that I've dumped all that out.
I think, well, part of this, the message, especially the Katy Perry one, both of them really, but it's this whole thing. Back when I was younger, I remember the commercials. There were actual commercials on TV where it talked about the mom of a house, mom of a family, and remember the song? It was, "You can bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan." And the whole message was, you can work too, right, and you can do everything at home.
Yeah.
And there was no man doing his part.
Well, it was, I can bring him the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never ever let him forget he's a man.
Whatever that meant.
I don't know what that meant.
I don't think that was the end goal.
Look, the shift in our society, feminism has been around, for a very long time, right? I mean, there have been women leaders of other countries and things, and sometimes that works out well, but sometimes it really doesn't.
Even 200 years ago, in the United States, there were women running businesses.
Yes, yeah.
And they were successful. And that's fine.
Yeah, and that's actually biblical. The Proverbs 31 woman had a business. She ran a business out of her home. That is different than going out and conquering corporate America and, devoting your time and resources to a business that if you quit tomorrow, they would replace you within a week. And then they would forget you were ever there. That's different. It's so, my daughters, one of my daughters has tried to run several businesses out of her home and do little side things and all this kind of thing. That's different. That's, but the shift, I mean, it's really started to happen in the 60s with that book, The Feminine Mystique. And I never read the book. I never wanted to read the book. I knew it would make me angry, and I can't bring myself to do it, right? But that's when the shift happened. That's when, like, my mom's generation, baby boomers, when they got the message that being at home, being a mom, taking care of your home, taking care of the community and building the community, those kinds of things were less than. They were not worth doing because they weren't real work. That's when the message really got out there, right?
I think that's part of the lie.
Yes, it is.
That wasn't real work and it wasn't worthy.
Right.
And if you really pressed people back then, they would say, sure it is, But if you look at the history of feminism in the various forms, the people pushing it would say we have to figure out how to convince these women to get out of the house, because
Yes.
back then they didn't want to, right?
Right.
They recognized that they had it pretty good,
Yeah.
you know, but they also recognized their strengths
Yeah.
as women,
Right.
as opposed to different strengths as men. Men having different strengths in different areas, and they didn't want to go. I mean, you know, you had the whatever Hollywood showed, women were only allowed to be secretaries or some dumb crap like that. You know, but in reality, women could go work.
There were women that worked at NASA.
Yeah,
You know, back in the 60s. We know that, you know.
And so on. So the lie kind of pitched it as I think, especially today, but even back then, the whole message of feminism and how they brought us to today was that if you're married, as a woman, if you're married and your husband wants you to stay home with the children, then you're oppressed.
Yes. Yes, there is that too.
You're just a slave. You're just doing housework, which again was seen as a less than type of thing. You weren't doing anything worthwhile, and so on. And if you really just take time to think about it, raising your children is the most worthwhile thing you can do.
Yeah.
And yeah, nobody says it's easy.
It's definitely not.
But the things that you do there, and taking care of the house. I mean, so you clean some, and I don't want to minimize that either, you know, but you clean the house and you cook food, dinner, whatever. And there were other things that women did in that time. It's interesting, they had, I'm trying not to bounce all over the place, but you know, back then, what did women do? Before they, en masse, went out into the workplace. Before that, they had time to raise their children, keep the home, and then be out in the community,
right,
creating community.
Yes.
So in reality, it's you create your community at home as you raise the kids, and train human beings, baby human beings, how to be good human beings, which is, as I said, is the most worthwhile thing.
Right.
And then they would go out and extend that and create community in other places.
Right.
Right. So that you had a whole community that, you know, be together. We had created friends. They did, I don't know what.
Well, no, they would take care of needs. Like if someone just had a baby, you would go and
take care of each other. Sure.
Mom,
yep.
You know, and we talked about this in the context of Little House on the Prairie. There was not a lot of feminism going on at Little House on the Prairie, but it just, this picture struck me that when they finally got to the town where they were going to stay, the men had to go out and build the town.
Yep.
They had to build all of the buildings that the businesses were in. They had to run the businesses. And I just thought of it as the men built the church, which at that time was the center of the community.
Yep.
That's where community things happened, was in the church. And if you think back to the show wasn't completely accurate to the books, but that is the way it was portrayed. The church was also the school, was also where they had town meetings.
Right.
And other, you know, it was everything. It was kind of all in one. So I thought of it as, you know, the men built the church, the women built the community that was in the church.
Right.
The women got together and said, we're going to have a big Christmas celebration.
Right.
You know, we're going to get a Christmas tree and people bring gifts and, you know, we'll sing songs and all of that kind of stuff. This is not things that go on in men's minds when they get together. They don't think of things like that. Right?
Not often.
No. So, but, you know, that's one of our biggest responsibilities is like we know the people, some of the people on our street.
Yes.
And there's a couple at the end of the street that I kind of keep an eye on. They're a much older couple. He's been very ill for a long time. She's older than my parents actually. So, but that's not something that would occur to you to like go down there and check on them or just
true,
you know, chat with them unless they're out already and they want to talk. Just things like that. These are things because women are people oriented.
Right.
Right.
Men are object oriented.
Yeah.
Tend to be. Whenever we say men are or women are,
yeah,
we really mean women tend to be people oriented. Men tend to be this or that.
Mm-hmm.
There's overlap, right?
There is.
But where our strengths lie, as you were describing, you know, the men built the buildings.
Yeah.
They ran the businesses, protected the town.
Yes, there's that too.
Provided for the town.
Yeah.
And the women created the community within the town.
Yeah.
So that it was a home in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever the town equivalent of home is.
Yeah.
Women create the home inside a house.
Right.
Raise children inside the house, but it's the mini community, as I said earlier, and then extend it out into the bigger community in the town. Now, obviously, we have big cities now and things like that, but you can still do it.
Right, like that's what I was just saying about our
right, in the neighborhood and,
right.
and so on. So, the community within the gym, the community within churches today.
Right. But it was about, you know, like early 70s and going into the 80s when we started to see the big shift to, of course, a woman is going to work outside the home. Our generation was the latchkey kids.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what that is, it means that we generally left the house after our parents had gone to work already. I know that was the case with me. I had to lock up the house when I went to school, and my brothers and I all had keys. And when whoever got home first, unlocked the house and went inside. And I had, you know, a bunch of responsibilities at home, because my mom worked. That's just how it was. So, but our generation was the first one.
Yeah.
That happened to, because our generation was the first generation where our moms went to work.
Yeah.
And they did not stay home all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And the issue isn't that we're not saying that they shouldn't have gone to work as much as, well, I mean, obviously you've got public school going on as opposed to a school run by the town, which is more like a neighborhood today.
Yeah.
Towns are more like, you know, neighborhoods today are more like the towns back then.
Right.
And they would get together and the children would go to the school that was run by that group of parents.
Yes.
Right. So the children were taught what they needed to be taught, not what the government thought they should be taught.
Yes, there was that. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the government taking kids out of school.
Taking kids out of
kinds of schools. Out of the home.
Right.
And out of, private schools or mini schools or whatever you want to call them. And into this compulsory state-run school.
Yeah.
Right.
And you have no control over, actually, in most states, you have no control over what your children are being taught. If you send them to public school, that's just a fact.
And it all started out as, they were being taught what you thought they should be taught.
Yes.
in general, science, math, blah
Yeah.
blah blah. But then you look at them today, and
It's a mess.
they're not being taught very well.
No.
Those subjects, and then I think schools are have less. How can I say it? The environment is not as good. I mean, only in a few communities where you might have parents who are very involved and there's a lot of money in the families, right? Upper income families. Right. Do you get parents that involved? And you could still have, I mean, even in private schools, you could have the teachers teaching stuff that you don't want your kids to see,
right?
At least at the ages that they're showing them, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway,
so women kind of abandoned this idea of the smaller community, and they went off to work.
Yeah.
And so now you've got, dad's gone, mom's gone, kids in a government school, and we have families where mom and dad might see their kids for a couple of hours a day, if that.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way things should be. It's not the way it used to be, but it's not the way it should be either. It really is not.
Right. And so think about it. I mean, you got 2-parent households, 2-income households.
Right.
In a lot of cases where I'm not going to go into the politics and all that stuff because you can research that, but you got like looking at today, and prices are what they are, and
right.
Yeah, there's reasons for the inflation that we've had in the past few years and all that, but in general, prices have gone up because family incomes have gone up.
Right.
And in some cases, you can get a little bit more or have a better lifestyle. But in general, I think people are finding that stuff costs more because people have more money to spend on it. And that's how things work.
Right.
So there's that problem.
Right. And then we haven't touched on how we saw the entertainment shift.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so what we saw growing up, we had shows like, I mean, we had some bad shows. There were some bad shows, right? But there was also Happy Days, Good Times, The Jeffersons, and then there was, The Cosby Show. And look, for all his faults and for whatever has gone on with him, Bill Cosby made one of the last shows on television that showed an intact, healthy family where the dad and the mom knew their roles and they raised their children right. There has not been another television show like that since that one went off the air. I can't think of one.
Well, what we're trying to say is that if you look at commercials today, if you look at a lot of entertainment today,
right,
and all the shows where there is a mom and a dad in the home and that sort of thing, men are portrayed as bungling fools,
yes,
idiots, oafs. They don't know how to do anything, etc. When in reality, obviously, I'm a man, and we're not like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I mean, we can kind of act goofy sometimes, but that's because we like, to keep fun in things and all that, but we can still go build stuff.
Yeah.
And this is not to say that women can't go build stuff too, but the issue is, what are we naturally oriented to do?
Right.
And all that. But what we're saying here is the message, the cultural message,
it's shifted,
that everyone is seeing, including our children today, are seeing that fathers are incompetent and at best and totally unnecessary in most cases.
Yes.
And so that's what you see. You've got this high divorce rate, marriage rates going down,
Marriage rates have plummeted, actually. Yeah.
and so on. And okay, so this brings in part of feminism, brought in, birth control.
Yes.
So what happened there was, it was pitched as, women have more freedom, reproductive freedom, as they call it. You got abortion, you got birth control. Now you got the day after abortion pill, whatever.
Yeah.
And things like that. And alongside of that, you got, and I'm not saying women shouldn't vote, but you got women voting, and then the laws getting changed. And today, if you go look, you can see the statistics where the laws related to marriage and divorce favor the mom,
Yes.
favor the women, and disfavor men. And so it created this environment where you don't, and I'm again, we've talked about this before related to marriage and divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And we are obviously pro-marriage. That's what this whole thing's about.
Yeah.
But obviously, if there's, let's throw out the caveat, right? If there's abuse and infidelity, that sort of thing that you can't get worked through, then divorce is a possibility or a probability, maybe even warranted in certain circumstances. But in general, it's too easy.
It is.
Right.
It is. That I believe that happened in the 80s, the no fault.
Yeah, no fault divorce.
No fault divorce.
It's like, well, I just don't like you anymore. We're gonna get divorced, and poof.
Yeah, you don't make me happy.
Your life is destroyed.
Yeah.
And anyway, so
women have been sold a lie since at least the 60s, and actually prior to that we don't need men, and that they are disposable, and that if you are in a relationship with a man and he no longer, I'm going to quote you here, gives you the tingles, then it's time to walk. Sure. It's over. It's over. It's never coming back. You need to get away. He's toxic. They throw all these labels on it. You're in a toxic relationship. You need to get out of it. And they made it very easy for women to get out of those, like you said, the marriage laws, right? Mm-hmm. Also, very easy, quote unquote, to get out of a pregnancy that you didn't want, which the statistics behind that are pretty astounding. The number of women who, so I just finished a little mini series. It was made back in the early 2000s, I guess. It was called The 60s. And I watched it when it first came out, and I thought I liked it. So I found a copy and I watched it. It was horrible. It was really bad. I felt like high schoolers wrote the script. It sucked. But one of the pivotal scenes in it was one of the female characters sitting in a doctor's office with a female doctor, of course, and this female doctor hands her the pill and says, "You've just taken charge of your sex life. Do you have anything to say?" And she goes, "Yeah, I hope my mom doesn't find out." That's anyway.
What's your point?
My point is, with the pill, they made it quote unquote easy for women to act like men sexually. Yeah. And it's destroyed us. Okay. It's destroyed us. It's destroyed relationships. It's destroyed male-female relationships. It's just wrecked everything. And I don't know if we want to talk about the side effects of the pill.
Well, breeze through them.
Okay,
and then we got to get to the whole point of what we're talking about.
Right.
Related to relationships between men and women. But
right.
Go ahead and...
So,
what are we finding out now?
Yeah, so I dabbled in taking the pill briefly 2 times. Once after I left home, and I was on it for a month, and it made me so sick I couldn't take it. And then the second time, you and I had been married for a while, and I had a polycystic problem, whatever. Multiple cysts.
Something with cysts.
And so, my doctor was like, "Oh, take the pill, get rid of it." So took the pill, it got rid of it, but it made me feel icky. It was just a bad experience all the way around. But that's kind of anecdotal. If you talk to most women, you're going to find that they've had some kind of either very minor side effect or a major one. Heart attacks, strokes, things like that, blood clots, spontaneous abortions.
Yeah.
Where, you're trying to get pregnant and you took the pill and you got off of it and you end up with miscarriages,
Yeah.
And now what they're finding with the pill is that it alters who a woman is attracted to.
Yep.
Because you cannot mess around with your hormones, which is one of the main ways that your engine runs is hormones, right? You cannot mess with that and not have side effects. Right? So it's altered who women are attracted to. And you can look up articles on this, and if I can find, I think there's a couple of links I can probably put in the description below. But it literally makes women find effeminate men attractive. A man who is soft and gentle but can't really protect you or provide.
Generally.
He's just going to be really, really nice to you, which is an element of what you want in your relationship, but it can't be all of it. Right?
Yes. And I think the key there is what you find is you're attracted to this sort of man, and then you come off the pill.
Yeah.
Because you want to start having kids,
right.
And you have kids, but over time, as your body gets used to not being on the pill, and time goes by, and you start to look at the man you've married, the one you've picked to be your husband, and he's not who you would have picked had you not been on the pill.
Had you not had your entire hormonal panel altered.
Right.
Yes.
So I think that can tend to drive women to say, I'm not happy in this situation because I don't like him anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the guy that you pick before you get pregnant and have kids.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not on the pill, you're going to choose a more masculine man.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about this crap related to toxic masculinity, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah.
We're talking about actual masculinity where men are providing and protecting.
Yeah.
And yes, they may be dangerous men, but they know how to keep that all in check in order to protect.
Right.
Not to just go out and abuse. We don't want that. So that's what you end up with, and I think that's another driver besides easy divorce laws. It's another driver where a lot of women who can get on the pill when they're like 16.
Oh, earlier than that,
or
13.
Okay.
As soon as you start your period,
doctors
the doctors
say,
will start. Doctors will start you on that, and
So we're like seeing. So the standard practice is to say, let's tell your body that you're pregnant from the time you're 13 until whenever, even though you're not pregnant.
Right.
Right. And it's not going to be a big deal, right? It solves all these problems and everything else, but it totally disrupts natural hormone cycles. Yeah, it can be terrible.
My periods were terrible.
Women,
my periods were terrible.
Right, and I want to have empathy for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the end result is the long-term end result is worse.
It is.
Than if you had never done it and just endured through puberty or whatever.
Right.
So
if you look back at the 60s and then look where we are now, 60 years later, right? I mean, look at what we're dealing with now. We've got girls, college girls, who say we don't need men. Like what? How? I just how did we? This is a mishmash of things that all happened
Mm-hmm.
to convince young girls that they don't need men. And it's well, a lot of it has to do with the lack of dads too. Like there either wasn't a dad, or you have the scenario play out that you just described, and
The dad is
disposed of or just trampled on at home.
Right.
You know, he does not occupy his proper role as a dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that kind of reminds me of the whole, you'll hear a lot today, or you can hear a lot about, the patriarchy and it's
Yes.
bad and all that.
Right.
And when in reality, I think what should be, and I heard this, I think it was on Tim Pool. We were listening
Yes.
to one of their podcasts, and it had been rolling around in my head trying to figure out how to describe this, because what we've got today is, take a look at an individual man, an individual woman, and they look at each other with antagonism, right? They're against each other.
Pretty much.
They're competing for the same jobs.
Yeah.
They're competing for the same stuff to do, right? Women are trying to be men. And they take those roles and all of that. And again, we're not talking about being unable to do the role. We're talking about what do we tend to be better at.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the grander scale, when you think about patriarchy and matriarchy, they're pitted against each other.
Yeah.
And the way I finally heard this, and they talked about, I'm not going to be able to paraphrase what they said, but what I worked out in my head and what Abby and I talked about was the patriarchy and the matriarchy both exist alongside each other, and and the matriarchy functions best within a patriarchy.
Yes.
If you could put it like that. So
right.
You could say the father's the head of the household, but that doesn't mean he is a dictator, right? He protects and provides, and most of the time, well, I should say, he makes final decisions about things, but all with the influence and input from his wife.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, you've got this mini patriarchy, but within it is the mini matriarchy.
Yeah.
And they both work in cooperation with each other.
Yeah.
And that way, men and women are not antagonistic. They work together. They're a team. That's what you should have. And that's why we're talking about this whole subject, because
right.
when you have a marriage, that's what you should have, is a team. And you
right.
face problems side by side. You don't look at each other and say, you're the problem, or you're the problem, whatever. Right. It's not that, the person is the problem. It's you two need to face the problem and solve it. And then on the societal scale, matriarchy works within patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at, say, we talked about church earlier,
right.
just to say, but this could be any kind of social group.
Mm-hmm.
Where the church, this is when you look at the Bible and Paul talks about who runs the church and who teaches in the church,
mm-hmm.
and it's the men,
yeah,
right. But within that, you have the women creating the community of the church.
Yes.
What we see today. Did you want to talk about like the suicidal empathy?
That's actually the title. It's the
then.
title of a book that we are going to buy when it's finally published and read it. Suicidal empathy has to do with the female urge to be empathetic, which is God-given and should be used in the right context, that is one of the things that women are supposed to do.
And
We
they
are
do it well,
and
and that's
do
great.
it right. So this is why we have the babies, you
And
know,
you
and
nurture them,
and we nurture them, and you know, we nurse them, and we do all these things, right? Suicidal empathy is actually correlated to an overly functional empathetic sense. Like, you have an older woman, she never got married, she never had children, but that maternal instinct is in every woman, whether she wants to admit it or not. It's there, and it will come out. It will come out. This is why you hear crazy cat lady, because this woman did not have children, so she adopts a bunch of animals.
Yeah.
And now that maternal instinct is coming out with her animals, right? And the suicidal empathy has to do with being so empathetic you can't see right from wrong. I think that's maybe the best way to describe it. Like, you, and I know women like this, and I'm friends with them, and I love them, but it's just wrong. I want everyone to be happy. So it doesn't matter what that person does in their private life to make themselves happy, whether it's wrong or not. As long as it makes them happy, we need to let them do it.
Yeah.
That's, you know,
Well, an example, a societal example.
Yeah.
Let's just put it at that level.
Okay.
Or even a family example.
Okay.
But they're kind of both the same thing, right? Dad is often brings the discipline in the
Yes.
home. He wants the children to respect him.
Yeah.
And he wants his children to respect his wife, their
Yeah.
mother. And sometimes you need to bring some discipline. And I'm not talking about abuse. I'm talking about discipline, whether
Yeah.
it's some kind of punishment,
Right.
taking away something or whatever, where, you know, you need to learn. And dads are good at this because they can be less emotional.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Where they can say, they could say, and I've done this, it's like, I hate this too, but you need this.
Yeah.
In order to get this lesson.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas moms can tend to say, I don't want to punish you because it makes me feel bad.
Yes.
Because you feel bad.
Yeah.
Right. So that's in the home. And then out in society, you see people campaigning to take away punishment for criminals.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you don't have law and order because people feel bad for the criminal. It's funny how they never feel bad for the victim of the criminal.
Right.
But they somehow feel bad for the criminal because, oh, we can't punish him. It's society's fault, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's like, so what the suicidal empathy does on a societal scale is it takes away responsibility. And that is the same thing as taking away individual agency from a person. Because that person, in reality, made a choice to do a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Steal, murder, whatever it is. They made that choice. And suicidal empathy, when you don't punish them, you're saying, oh, it's society's fault. Or I don't want them to feel bad because it makes me feel bad as a woman. Then you've taken away their agency to do something.
Right.
They can't fix themselves.
Yeah.
They can't do better. Right?
Mm.
And the same thing happens to your children in the home.
Yes.
Right? They will not do better unless they are taught to do better.
Right. And so this is where mom is there to help the child with their emotional, whatever is going on. Dad is necessary to help the child regulate their emotions.
Yes.
Like one of the people that I listened to, it was just him and his brother, and their dad is like athletic. He's a big guy, and he, but he was a good, strong father figure in their life. And, this guy has said that if I didn't get what I wanted, sometimes I would just cry, like a kid,
Yeah, like a
And his
kid.
dad would look at him and go, "Don't cry. You're not allowed to cry over this. Your tears are meant for specific things, and this is not one of them. You just didn't get what you wanted."
Yeah.
Whereas a mom would, I don't like to see any of my children cry now, and they're all adults, It's like, but that's where the emotional regulation comes in, right?
Yeah.
It really is up to dad to step in and go, no. You're not going to act this way in this situation. I'm putting my foot down, So that's here's the patriarch and the matriarchy right there,
Working together.
Yeah, working together.
And this is not saying, just to be sure, you understand, what we're not saying is we're not saying suppress all emotion. Men aren't allowed to cry. Men aren't allowed to have problems. Men aren't, because that's out there in society too, to be honest. But so as you raise your children, we're not talking about suppressing emotion, but we're talking about regulating it. The crying when you don't get your way is inappropriate.
Yeah.
If you fall down and get hurt and you cry, there's pain. I get it.
Yeah.
Right? And dad might make a judgment. You scraped your knee, get up and rub some dirt on it and run back outside. Right? I'm kidding, but not.
Yeah.
But mom can often say, well, this is worse than...
Oh, I could tell a funny story about how
why don't you do that?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you tell the story, because it'll embarrass me. Right?
Well, I mean, no harm done, right? No serious damage done. I had gone grocery shopping by myself, which I always appreciated you letting me do that instead of dragging 4 or 5 children with me to the grocery store.
Yeah.
So I ran to the grocery store. I came home, and we were living in this townhouse, and behind the townhouse was a swing set, little playground area in the middle of the whatever.
Sure.
So I get home, unpacking the groceries, and daughter number 3 comes in, and I look at her wrist, and there's a literal goose egg on her wrist. And I said, "What in the world did you do?" "Oh, I was swinging, and I jumped off the swing and landed on my arm." Right?
Yeah.
And so that had happened while I was gone. Not crying, not upset. Didn't even really seem to be in a lot of pain from what I can remember.
Yeah, she was. And the goose egg wasn't there when it happened.
But when you came inside, I said, "What in the world?" I said, and you said, "Yeah, she landed on her wrist. She's fine." I said, "No, it's broken. That is a broken wrist. It's broken." And this happened on a Saturday. So it's like, okay, we knew about our local emergency room. We're like, no, we're not doing that. I knew what to do.
Yeah.
So I put a splint on it, and we put some ice on it, did all the things, and gave her Tylenol or whatever for the pain. And I took her to the doctor on Monday. Right?
Yeah.
But again, it's just the way a dad reacts. If I'd been home and she'd fallen like that, I would have taken her in the house and, checked her over, and I probably would have picked up on it sooner.
Maybe. Like I said, I get it. But the point is the goose egg part of it wasn't there. There was no bruise. And she said,
Yeah.
when I checked, and she just kept playing.
Yeah.
Right? And then it developed later. So, but you picked up on it quicker. I would have eventually got there, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about the inability of guys to see issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is just a funny story, I think. I'm not sure how it pertains to what we're talking about.
Well, it's just the way men handle, emergency type situations like that, and the way women handle them. I would have handled it differently. Anyway.
Well, okay. The point. What was the point? The point. It's a funny story. Anyway, so we're talking about the matriarchy working within the patriarchy.
Right. Those are not dirty words. Neither one of them.
No, they're not. And when I talk about the patriarchy is there to provide and protect in general, right? The matriarch, it doesn't mean that matriarchy can't do those things, but it's better suited for a different job, which is matriarchy as a community, or raising children, nurturing, that sort of thing, nurturing relationships,
Right.
which we all need. And we're so if you look at society today, as I said, they're they're trying to pitch it as if they're antagonistic to one another, but they shouldn't be. They should work together.
Yeah.
And so if you look at, as I said, look at society today, and you see a lack of community.
Definitely.
Right. People are more lonely.
Yes.
And you can say a lot of that's social media, and that's true. But if the matriarchy was doing the job of community instead of trying to do the job of provide and protect,
right,
which is what the patriarchy side of the equation should be,
right,
then we would still have community.
Yeah.
Right. Today we just heard about how kids are lonely. Kids don't do as well when they're given smartphones at a young age.
Yes.
And that sort of thing.
Yes, there are people who are giving their kids smartphones at age 6, which blows my mind.
Well, yeah. And so you have part of that is, if a parent's going to give their kid a smartphone at 6, then the smartphone becomes the babysitter.
Yes.
And there's no relationship with the mom or with the parents.
Or with anyone else, for that matter, really.
Yeah. And we also, we saw another discussion study that talked about, friendships being formed and not formed. And this gets into a little bit of the social media part of this, but if you give your kids a smartphone and they form quote unquote friendships online, they can seem like friendships because they're talking to other people.
Yeah.
And that's fine as far as it goes. And and I'm not dissing the internet and social media so much as the fact that we've lost the getting out in real life.
Right.
Kids used to, obviously they didn't have smartphones, so they would go out and they would meet other kids in real life, and they would form friendships. And we know that the bonding hormone of oxytocin is not just husband and wife bonding, it's friendship bonding too.
It is, yeah.
But it only occurs in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go be with someone, touch someone, play, kids play together, and that sort of thing. And then you get this bonding, and you learn how to make friendships and handle relationships in real life. But with a smartphone, all your friends are all over the place, but you don't see them.
You can also fake a lot of stuff.
And you can fake stuff online, yes.
When you're actually friends with someone in real life and you see them on a regular basis, you can't hide.
Yeah, it's very hard to. It's a lot harder at least.
You can do it, but it's hard to hide.
Okay, but bringing it back is, the point is, we don't want to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Giving our kids smartphones and not relating to them. We should be building community, and we've lost that.
Right.
At least to a big extent.
Now this is still tied to feminism here. There's
well, this is what we're talking about. What feminism has brought about.
Yes.
Because
where we are now.
Because of what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, the proponents of today's version of feminism.
Right.
Is what they're trying to do is generally they want to break apart the family, which is the major central piece of forming a stable civil society.
Yes, it is.
So they've done that. They've made things antagonistic and between men and women, and they've also, I think the final bit is they've changed outcomes of children, meaning their success outcomes.
Yes.
If you want to talk about that. So, right, and that just perpetuates the cycle where children don't know how to. They don't know what a family should look like,
Right.
and how things should be like. They often are raised with a lot of in a more stressful environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're not taught to as we talked about earlier,
Regulate.
they're not taught to regulate their emotions because somebody believed and keeps saying, this is what the courts do, is no matter how bad the mom is, children need their mom more than their dad. And so mom gets custody of the kids, and then obviously, even if it's a good arrangement, mom is usually the primary caretaker.
Right.
And if it's not a good arrangement, there's bitterness, then often dads could just be cut out. And kids don't see their dad.
That was the case in my house. I had a weird view of men growing up. And it was because I saw my parents get divorced. I was 8 years old. I remember when it happened. And then my mom married completely the wrong person, obviously.
Sure.
He was abusive and awful and alcoholic, everything, all that stuff. But so we didn't have a relationship. I did not have a father-daughter relationship with anyone, really. I mean, I would talk to my dad, my biological dad, once every couple of weeks on the phone. And then he would come and get us, and, we'd see him from time to time.
Right.
Right. But that's not a father-daughter. That's not a functioning father-daughter relationship.
No,
it's not. And so, and my mom made a point of painting my dad in the worst light.
Mm-hmm.
She really tried to turn me against him. It didn't work. But that was her goal, and I think that happens with a lot of women.
Yeah.
When they get divorced, it's like, he's an SOB, he's this, he's that. Even if she is to make stuff up to tell her kids to make dad look bad, then that's what she'll do. And I think that happens. She takes whatever the little thing was, maybe it was a big thing, that they got divorced over, and she tells her children about it. You don't do that. What? You don't do that. If your kids had a good relationship with their father, then you need to, if you're going to go through the awful process of divorce, you need to make some effort to help your children maintain their relationship with their father if everything is the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not that does more. It not only damages your children's relationship with their father, it alters the way your children view men. Their dad is the biggest man in their life, right?
Yeah.
He's everything. He was to me before my parents got divorced, right? My dad was everything. And my mom did everything in her power to destroy that. And too many women do that. Mm-hmm. And they don't realize it's not just that you're messing up your relationship between your kids and their dad. You're
messing up the children for their future.
Yes. Yeah.
For their future relationships.
Yes.
And I don't know, their abilities to succeed in life.
Yeah.
And that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Anyway. And I'll just throw this out there. As much as I said, the courts and somebody determined, and I don't know who it was, because if we didn't go back and research it, but the courts will usually say that mom is better than dad for the children. And what we're finding, if you go look at the data, actual data about children successfully graduating high school, mm-hmm. successfully getting a job, not being in poverty, getting married and having a successful relationship, right? Mm-hmm. As we would expect, as you would expect, if they were if they came out of an intact family, those kids do the best.
Mm-hmm.
They're more likely to graduate, to get married and have children after marriage, after they get married,
Yeah.
instead of before,
Right.
and not be in poverty.
Yeah.
Right. Those metrics. Where then they said, well, who's next? Right. And you would think children coming out of a home where it was a single mom raising them, and dad was either not there or not there very much because this is the way the courts see it, you would think that they would do, at least the next best. And the feminist lie says that they would do even better than an intact family. Well,
Yeah.
they don't do better than an intact family. And what the data actually shows is that kids raised by a single father, if mom passed away or left and didn't care about the kids and didn't want to see them and all that stuff, kids raised by a single father do better almost as well as an intact family.
Mm-hmm.
And they certainly do much better than children raised by single moms. And I think people
There's a
tighten up.
visceral. There's a visceral.
They
There's
just hate
a visceral.
to hear that.
Yeah, it's because we've been sold that lie for decades
been
now. It's been
decades.
decades we've been sold that lie.
Right.
Yes.
But if you look, you can see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Often kids of single moms, either the mom has to work or is collecting alimony and welfare or some combination, and they end up joining a gang because they're looking, especially the boys,
Yes.
don't have a father figure, so they end up joining a gang, end up in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was the other statistic. Successful outcome, meaning not being in prison, right? Children of single moms are more likely to end up in prison than children of single dads. So if you go look at that data, it's all out there, yet we've believed the lie for the past 60 years, 80 years,
Right.
somewhere in there,
Yeah.
that it's the other way around. And I think, when you look at society today, here's what we're talking about. You can see the problems that the whole idea of feminism after the initial part of feminism,
Right.
or the initial wave, if you want to call it like
Yeah.
that. Everything after that, it changed over, and over the past just 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it took to bring our society to this point where we aren't in community anymore. We're lonely. We don't want to get married. When we are married, there's a high divorce rate, and our children are doing worse.
Yes. Yes.
So that is
And
the
you know,
feminist lie.
yeah, okay, yes, it is. And this actually, we're not trying to blame it all on women. I mean, men have been just as guilty of perpetuating these
Yes.
feminist myths as back when these laws were passed and the pill was invented and all this stuff. There weren't any women in government. There weren't any women passing laws. There was none of that.
Right.
Right?
So
It was all
had
men.
to choose to change the law so
Yes.
that these things could happen.
Yeah.
And of course, men can say, well, hey, I can go have sex with this girl and that girl and the other girl all I want because they're not going to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And I don't have to take any responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't even have, if they do get pregnant, I don't have to take any
Yes.
responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So men fell down in their responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Men bought the lie.
Yeah.
The feminist lie that,
That there's,
all free sex is good
and there's no consequences.
and there's no consequences.
But we're seeing the consequences today, as we just described in society, as we described earlier about how women choose mates,
Mm-hmm.
and whether they stay together.
Right.
I think it's feminized men to a certain point, to
yeah, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of factors involved in that.
Right.
We won't go into that right now, but
well, yeah, but we've talked about the main issues that we've seen that have been brought around.
right.
And I think that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast is because we want to see good marriages recover.
Yes.
Or marriage recover, relationships between men and women recover.
Mm-hmm.
Women out there, you got to understand when you're taking the pill what it's doing to you.
Right.
Right? Doctors only tell you what they're told. Right? But you're just an income stream for the companies that make the pill.
Yes. Yeah.
And, you got to go find out what could happen and how it's affecting you. You're altering your hormones, in a sense, permanently, at least let's say for a decade or two before you decide to finally get off the pill and have children.
Right. If you even
decide
yet another
to do
side
it,
effect. Right.
Yeah. I mean, maybe makes it a lot harder to have children.
Yeah. Yeah. It can for a lot of women. Yeah.
And I'm not saying all women, but yeah, for a lot of women.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. I think we've summarized.
I think we have. I hope that I hope that we've made our point sufficiently clear here. I've never been a feminist. Like I said, if you look at my social media, that's one of the first things I say. I rejected that notion way back in high school, actually.
Yeah. And
I think a little bit of it may have been because all my friends were doing it, and I always ran in the opposite direction of what all my friends were doing. It was this rebellious streak I always had and still have, actually.
That's why I married you.
I'm not a conformist. But, very early on, I started looking around at what was going on around me in my 20s, when we got married. And it's like, this is not headed in a good direction at all. Right. This is not going to end well. And it hasn't ended yet, but, it's not looking good out there. It's really not.
We need to turn it around.
Yes.
And again, we're not saying take away rights and all of this. What we're talking about is people being knowledgeable about how to deal with
the opposite sex.
And how to deal with the freedoms we have.
Yeah.
As it relates to getting married, not and having children,
Mm-hmm.
raising family,
right,
and so on. And we've got a couple ideas for future podcasts. One talking about the effect of sex with multiple partners.
Yes.
Before marriage.
Yep.
So we'll go into that in the future podcast. And the other one,
I know we've talked about happiness before, but I think we're going to cover that one from a different angle.
Right. We'll do another one like that.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple other good ideas.
Right.
So just to pique your interest for the future.
Right. And those will probably be in the next.
Don't promise any time frame.
3 to 4 months. We'll just say 3 to 4 months. We can handle that, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And then we're going to be headed into the holidays, so no promises.
We never make promises about our schedule. We do this for fun, and we hope that we educate some people, and you can use our experience. So again, if you have any questions about this or you want resources, you can email us at marriageonthehalfshell@gmail.com. And we'll try to get to any questions you have.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
All right.
I hope we've sufficiently squashed feminism. Let's say it that way. Not a fan.
Just playing our part. All right.
This has been Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed.